Well, that's exactly what President-elect Donald Trump is threatening to do. On his first day in office, Trump said he would sign an order to slap a huge 25% tariff on all products coming from Mexico and Canada. His reason? To fix what he calls the ridiculous open borders. But what does this mean for the US economy? And why are so many economists worried about it? Let's dive in and find out. Chapter 1. Trump's bold 25% tariff threat. President-elect Donald Trump has caused worry among economists with his plan to impose a 25% tariff on products from China, Mexico and Canada on his first day in office. He posted on Truth Social saying crime and drugs, especially fentanyls, are flooding into the US from these countries. Trump says the tariffs will stay until Mexico and Canada and China stop illegal immigration and drugs. While Biden was criticized for his border control, Trump believes these countries can fix the problem, and if not, they'll have to pay. He also mentioned talking to China, but nothing was done. Drugs are pouring into our country, mostly through Mexico, at levels never seen before. Finally, he writes, until they stop, we will be charging China an additional 10% tariff, above any existing tariffs, on all their products coming into the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Chapter 2. Trump's tariffs on China. Now I want to be clear, Donald Trump did implement tariffs during his first term. They have targeted tariffs against China. At that time, what he kept citing was the trade deficit. Now he's essentially using tariffs, or the threat of them, as a cudgel, a way to leverage China into taking action against the flow of fentanyl into the United States. However, it's worth noting that much of the financial and political world is deeply concerned that Trump is serious about implementing 25% tariffs on these three countries. I don't think he'll actually go through with it. He tends to make broad, sweeping statements and then pivot to more targeted policies, especially when it comes to tariffs. We depend on these countries for many goods, and tariffs would raise prices for consumers. While Trump's China tariffs were popular, blanket tariffs don't really make sense. They seem to be his way of starting talks. Chapter 3. The risks of blanket tariffs. If he's using tariffs to pressure China into shutting down fentanyl production or Mexico into stricter border policies, and if it works, then maybe it's strategic, but it's risky. For example, undocumented crossings from Canada, mostly involving South Asians, have gone up tenfold recently because it's easier to enter through Canada than Mexico. My concern is that someone might eventually call his bluff, and lumping Mexico and Canada, our closest neighbours and trade partners, with China could backfire. If I were Mexico's president, I'd be thinking about how to respond carefully. What do you think? Chapter 4. The impact of a 25% tariff. If Trump actually implements a 25% tariff on imports from these three countries, it would seriously hurt the economy. The high rates aren't sustainable, and if the bluff is called, the damage could last months. I don't think he'll go through with it. It's too reckless and irresponsible. Why? Because we rely heavily on these countries for essentials like oil, cars, machinery and the plastics. While encouraging companies to manufacture in the US sounds great, it takes years to build factories and start production. What happens to Americans in the meantime? Trump also claims slashing corporate taxes will offset lost revenue through tariffs, but this shifts the burden to everyday Americans who'll face higher prices on imported goods, hurting low and middle-income families far more than the wealthy. And when we're talking about the tax cuts, the wealthy get to take advantage of the tax cuts through the corporate tax cuts, but tariffs shift the burden to everyday Americans. These tariffs act like a hidden tax, making things more expensive for working-class people, while corporations enjoy big tax cuts. If this continues, it could spell disaster for regular consumers. If people support paying more so the richest pay less, it will only encourage this cycle. But if Trump's supporters and moderates realize they didn't sign up for higher prices, there might be pushback. Remember, many voted for him expecting lower costs, not more expensive goods. This is risky territory. Inflation, a key issue that helped Trump win, is still a major concern. In 2023, the US imported $1.3 trillion in goods from three major countries, including $418 billion from China alone, creating a significant trade deficit. The question is, how will Americans respond to these policies? Chapter 5. The Global Trade Reality. Trump often talks about the trade deficit, but let's break it down. The US buys a lot from Canada, mostly crude oil. The US also trades more with Mexico than any other country, importing over $400 billion in goods like cars and electronics and medical tools. These tariffs could hurt the US economy and consumers. Mexican leaders, like President Claudia Sheinbaum, warned that tariffs could harm businesses like General Motors and Ford. She also pointed out that most illegal guns used by cartels in Mexico come from the US, making cooperation harder. Guns are smuggled from the US into Mexico, where cartels use them to harm civilians. She's pointing out that while the US complains about fentanyl, Mexico is upset about these guns. She's not refusing to talk, but is showing strength by saying, "If you threaten us, we'll stand firm." I respect that approach. Now, about Trump, he's unpredictable, so he could go either way. I'll say something some Democrats might not like. In situations like this, bluffing and using pressure works. If you want something from China, Mexico, or Canada, a threat can be more effective than just polite requests. That said, it's about balance. Trump sometimes overuses threats, while Biden rarely uses them at all. The best approach combines rewards and consequences used wisely. Starting with a strong stance is fine, but sticking only to threats is risky if the bluff is called. So, what do you think? Will Trump actually go through with the 25% tariff, or is he just bluffing? Could this hurt the US economy, or is it a smart move? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.